not really working. So it should be working now. I swear, I just need like somebody to just come in here and sit next to me and set these stupid things up because I have such a problem. Good to see you guys. Everybody that's here before me, Maria and H Dude and Joe. Awesome to see you all. This is the manuscript feedback session, which is different from the writing sprints where I give you feedback on the pages that people have submitted. The submission page, which I'll drop into the comments in a second. Yeah, hi Dexter. I know I'm so so far from a tech guru. It's not even funny. My husband just laughs at me because he is a techie guy, but he's not going to sit here next to my live streams and make sure it all works. The regular Friday sprints, we write together and I put up a prompt and we talk about writing in between. This is more for people to get actual feedback on their books. And I have, I think, four of them because I have one left over from before. Hey, Fred's here. Awesome. And I knew Maria and Fred are working. So even though Joe, you're here too, I think I'm going to try to do Fred and Maria first because I know that they're at work. Um, and try to get everybody some feedback really fast. You can submit 200 words on the Google form, but it has to be done a few days before this event because obviously I need time to look at it. Once you guys see what I do for the feedback, which here's the form if you want to submit for next time, which is in 2 weeks. Um, I need a few days, obviously, to look at it. I read what happens when I do feedback like this, whether it's with my masterminds or at a consult or on this little free session, is I read the whole thing at least twice, usually 3 or 4 times. I read it once for just through just to see what it's like, read it a second time with edits in mind, make the edits, read it again after the edits, go back, reconsider the edits, see if maybe I should put some more in. So this is obviously time consuming, and that's why you guys have to have it in as early as possible so that I have time to do it because I do work like everybody else during the day. I run a company that does communications and nonfiction ghostwriting and stuff like that. And so my days are pretty packed, just like everybody else. And yes, a checklist for plotting would be helpful. I think I am going to have something like that in the Writers Boot Camp that starts on the 20th. I have a bunch of little forms that you guys, depending on how you like to think, I've got one that's visual, I've got one that's written, depending on what works best for you guys. And I do have a checklist for revisions. I don't necessarily use one for a plot, but this form that I have in the boot camp should be pretty helpful for that. So I've got this entire kind of plotting um, packet that is a little bit above and beyond free complete plot plan that I have on the site. All right, let's go and see who we're going to do first. Let's do Fred first because I do know that Fred's at work as well. I know Maria, you are too. Um, I'm going to try to be fair to everybody with work. All right, so let's do Fred's first. So Fred, I really liked. Let me pull it up on my side. I really liked the idea that you had. I thought that was really cool. The thing that you want to, I know that you're asking me from chapter 34 whether this is any good, but you definitely have to have chapter one and the very first page be really, really good because you've got to get people to, keep reading. So, what I wanted you to do was show more than tell. And you will see that I tell pretty much everybody that in this particular session because it's funny, people tend to make some of the same mistakes. So you have her running her fingers through his hair as he sleeps, and I don't know about you, but it would totally wake me up right away. I would be like unable to function if somebody did that with me, because it would just be too weird. Let me see if I can bring this screen over so I can see this one over here and that one over there. Um, Hold on, I'm trying to get myself technologically sitting here. Okay, it's not going to let me do both things. I'm not good at the two monitor thing either. So if you have a question, I'm going to have to look for it in a second. So I'd like to see it be more visual, have it be more showing and a little bit less aggressive, I guess, because it would wake him up if she just ran her fingers through his hair. So danced her fingers a feather touch against his hair. And that also brings a picture to mind, right? Of how she's kind of discovering him, right? It seems like they've had this bonding and it's something new for her. So let's just show that in the way that she touches him. And then let's show the connection instead of saying the connection she felt. Let's show it with tether extended between her heart and this young man, winding and tightening as she drank in his features. So now we're seeing that tether grow as she's touching him and talking to him. And that's what you really want to show is what is going on here between them. Satisfaction brimmed in her chest is just a little bit more showing than a sensation of satisfaction enveloped her. That's a little bit more telling. And an almost maternal sense of connection, a job well done. I liked that. And I liked this at the moment the world's problems were not allowed to intrude. I liked that. But I'd like you to move the she wanted to feel this way forever to the end of the sentence because I want to get through all the feelings and then that she doesn't want them to go away. So the pain had passed, and I wasn't sure what pain you were talking about. You'll see that in my comments. And except for the consummation, the bonding was complete. So I think you also need to show the, if it's a ceremony, if it's a ritual, maybe just a tiny bit more there. Now, so then you move with she wanted to feel this way forever to the end. That's so that you've got all of the feelings and then the impact on her. I like the line, you will be a great man, she whispered. I like that part, but let's show him in her dreams. Instead of just saying, having seen his future in her dreams, that's telling. Let's show it. For years, his future had dominated her dreams. The dark haired boy conquering worlds, slaying demons, rising in arm and victory. Then you're actually showing the dreams and what he's doing. Now, obviously, you're probably going to change this based on your plot because I don't really know what's going on with your plot. Hey, Tearstone, you always miss when I'm completely screwing up on the whole audio thing, which is pretty much every time. Um, oh, a checklist for setting up sound video. Yes, I really should do one of those, Dexter. You're right. So let's show what the dreams are like, Fred, so that we can actually see what she's seeing in her head. And now let's show her getting closer to him rather than just talking about the quiet confidence, which I like that line. I left that there. Quiet confidence settled deep in her soul. But let's show it just a little bit. She curled into the space beside him, warm body to warm body, her head so close to his chest she could hear the steady thump thump of his heart. Now we're starting to care about him just as much as she does because you're showing that she cares. You're not saying it, you're not telling the reader, you're showing it with her putting her head on his chest, listening to his heart. And then I think the other thing that you have to kind of draw out a little bit more is this whole thing with her father, because I wasn't quite sure about this. So let's show the bonding enveloped her in a sense of togetherness, which is basically what you said, is that she doesn't feel alone anymore, almost as if she'd become two people no longer alone. And I just wanted you to kind of draw that no longer alone thing out. And then the father thing really confused me. So in the past, father had been the one to shelter her, comfort her. Now he seemed a distant memory, but I'm not quite sure why she would think this is an indictment of her father's love. I assume she's an adult. Um, and it wouldn't be in quotation marks because it's a thought and it's not even like it's just not even anything that needs to be italicized. It's all within that third person point of view. And then again, actions to show that she's going to wipe that away and not think about it because you're not just showing what's going on in this scene, you're showing through her actions how she feels. So she drew the blanket over them and closed her eyes. That's an action that shows she's not going to think about it anymore. The past no longer mattered. She was with the only person who did matter, and that's Kyle. So that then you're using more actions in there to really show what's going on between them. Does that make sense, Fred? So let me know if you have questions. Yeah, I absolutely should do a checklist here, Stone. Absolutely. Because I'm always forgetting something like, is my mic plugged in? Because I only use this mic for video calls. And I just had a video call, but it was on my phone, not on here. So, all right, Fred, if you let me know if you have questions, you can drop them in the comments. I will email this to you after we're done with the session. Oh, okay, good. I'm glad you like the suggestions. It's always hard too to know if you're going to make people cry or actually help them out. So I don't ever want to make anybody cry, but I do want to help you guys with everything. So it's a great little scene. It can just be taken to the next level by showing a little bit more. Okay, so let's go to Maria is on here. Okay, let's go to her because she's working, and then I'll come back to you, Joe. Let me make sure I've got the right one showing. I've got to pull it up. It's a whole thing. It's a whole thing, guys. All right, Maria, are you ready? And yes, Fred, and absolutely, I will send it to you afterwards. Okay, so Maria, you have the two characters, Portia and Jaguar, which I kind of like their names. I literally just read a scene with a car racing yesterday. I think it was in Charlie Donlea's book, Then She Was Gone or something like that. But I thought of you and then I meant to write it down and it was 11 o'clock at night and I totally forgot. So I'm sorry. let's bring this over here. But you have a car racing thing, and I really like the scene in Charlie Donlea's book. So when I email you, just remind me to tell you which book it was and which page it was. It's right in the beginning, so it should be in the excerpt on Amazon. And Carl, you're not supposed to have a scene that short. So the whole point of the 200 words is to teach you guys that every single word counts. And you will see how much I can do to these pages in 200 words as we're looking at Maria's. No scene should be 200 words. I just want to see 200 words because I want you to understand that every single word moves the plot forward. Every single word needs to show. So, and that's what I'm working on. It's just a partial scene with everybody. You give me a little bit of a synopsis of what the book's about, a teeny tiny one, so I know what we're looking at. And then you just give me the 200 words. And yes, Tearstone, I could use a little kind of checklist thing. All right, let's go back to Maria. So I wanted you to show the streets first because you started with the car racing. And when I looked at the first time, racing through the darkness to get home, I was like, okay, first of all, then racing through the darkness, my headlights bounce off a line was what you had before. And technically, when you have a in construction racing through the darkness, the the verb is racing, and the noun that is creating that verb is the headlights, and so that doesn't really work. So I don't like starting with an in construction because it creates awkward sentences. But above and beyond that, I really wanted to get the mood first. So and I read about who she was as a character, and I wanted you to bring a little bit of that out there. So the streets are dark and desolate. The rest of the world at home and in bed or cozying up with a loved one while I am working late again. So now we know that she's a workaholic in some way. And we don't have to talk about her job, but the list of people to help and the number of hours in my day never adds up to a positive number. So boom, we like her. We know that she's a decent person. So that's all I wanted you to add was just a couple of lines. And then for the third time this week, so that we know she does this all the time, I'm racing through the darkness to get home and catch at least a couple hours of sleep before turning around and heading back to work. Then you've got her motivation for why she's driving so fast. Then the headlights are separate because they're not the ones racing. The car, she is in the car. My headlights bounce off a line of orange cones dotting the side of the 2-lane road. I like that. But I want to see the whole construction thing because it goes too quickly into what happens next without us kind of absorbing that this is a construction site. So flashing sawhorse warns of construction, but there are no workers, nothing but more nothing. So that you get draw it out just a tiny bit. And then let's show her slowing because I know you say I let off the gas slowing down even though it's the middle of the night and there are no workers. That is a little bit more telling than if you say flashing sawhorse warns of construction, but there are no workers. And then it's broken apart. So still I slow just in case. And again, that's her motivation for why she does it. But she doesn't want to. Here's a little conflict. My right foot itches to press the gas pedal, but I can hear my father in my head. So that then you create, by the right foot itching to press the gas pedal, you create a trigger for her to think of her father. You didn't really have a trigger before because you just had her say, my dad would be worried if he knew I was out alone so late. But you have to have something that triggers that memory of her dad. Um, and then you have his dialogue there. You do not need quotation marks around something that is italicized. And because he's not there and actually speaking it, you can do it in italics. So it's a thought because he's not actually there. And I think you just need, it's just like a little bit more here. Dad was nothing if not prepared, and he drilled that into me from birth. So then you have his motivation for why he taught her to change tires at 5, why he'd been so sure she would be a mechanic like him. And then I think you need to leave a little more suspense for the reader so that they're wondering what the heck happened and why she ended up in this situation. So we don't quite have that right here. So if you say instead on its own little line, because again, that pulls the beat out a little bit and gives the reader a second to just kind of be jarred by this short sentence. But then mom died and my life turned upside down. And now, like, I'm already choked up. Like, I worry about Portia. I feel really bad. But you don't go into any more detail because you just want the reader to be like, well, what happened and why did her life turn upside down? And then we need to kind of see why she starts going fast again. Because if she's going slow, she hits a deer. Yeah, I mean, she would A, see the deer, and B, she would hit a deer and not do as much damage. So let her just start to go fast again. Just as I pass the last cone and press down on the gas again, a flash of movement starts in from the left. And then let's see the deer, but don't let the reader know it's a deer right away. I see two white orbs, so we know those are eyes, a dark figure, and then the reader's like, oh my God, did she hit a person? What happened? So it's all about kind of drawing this out a little bit for the reader so that they're really excited about what's happening. And then I really wanted to see it. And I actually had watched a car crash on TV and went through that and kind of added those elements to this when I was working on this. I'm jolted forward as my car meets what feels like a wall. I've never hit a deer, thank God. But I know a lot of people that have hit deer and they're heavy and it's like boom, like a wall. There's the sick crumpling of metal, the screech of something in pain, and the shriek of my brakes. And again, we still don't know that it's a deer. The car spins to the right for what feels like an hour, then comes to a rest a foot from a telephone pole. Because if you think about what's happening, right? Like she's hitting the deer, but she hasn't had time to process it yet because the car's spinning and maybe the airbag goes off or maybe it doesn't. But all of these things are happening. So she doesn't have a second yet to process that this is a deer. So, and I'm just making, yes, can I hire you? I'll talk about that in a second. Yes, it is hard. I'm absolutely agree with you guys that this is hard. And when I go and work on my stuff, I go through the same stuff. And I could use somebody that goes, "Hey, you should show this more than tell it." And so that way you're showing the crash bang, you don't have to say it. And then she takes a breath, right? Like then now that the car is stopped, she can look around. I glance around and see a deer bounding off into the woods alongside the road. He seems just fine. Because people will be upset if you kill the deer. Honestly, people get really upset. It looked like I killed a dog in one of my books. I didn't. He was kidnapped and he came back, but people were mad. Like I got a lot of mail about that. Meanwhile, my heart is racing, and if you can do this a little bit faster and with a parallel construction, this last sentence, it feels a little bit more frantic. Meanwhile, my heart is racing, my breath is running double time, my vision is fuzzy. So then you can hear how it's like a little bit in there. I shake my head and draw in a deep breath, which was yours. I liked that. But then let's show her character and her thinking, center, focus, regain control. That one line, we know who she is, right? And this may not be what your character would think. I just kind of added in so that I can show you something that would. You can have her do whatever you want, but it's just a couple of thoughts. Because you know how it is when like your thoughts get away from you, you got to think for a second. Okay, take a breath. It's going to be okay. Whatever you end up thinking in your head when you panic or have a big traumatic thing happen or whatever. The mantra slows my heart rate calms my breathing, and then you can move on to other stuff. So now you've kind of drawn it out a little bit more. And yes, I think it's a little bit longer than 200 words now, but it's definitely stronger and showing and more vivid than it was before. And yes, she's a little oppressed, which evokes sympathy, not happy in her normal life. Yeah, I didn't mean you people. I meant it's been a long day, very frustrating. Um, I didn't mean that, but yeah, I'm trying to do two things at one time, and I'm not very good at that. And thank you, Dexter. Yeah, I would not be a good boot camp drill sergeant. It's my kids. I'm way too easy on people. And in my editing work, though, it's not the same. Um, Mom's death in life turned her upside down. That's a hook to pay off later. Absolutely, Tearstone. That's the point. And hit a deer in the middle of the night. It's pretty terrifying for the people that I know that have hit deers and stuff. It's pretty hard. So Maria, let me know if you have questions on that or if it was like overwhelming. And I am cognizant of the fact that you guys are here live on the internet. There's maybe only 20 viewers, but still, you're live on the internet with your pages, and it can be a lot. So tell me if you're crying because I don't want that to happen. I want you guys to learn and to see how just drawing it out, doing a little bit here, a little bit there can make a huge difference. Okay, let's go to Joe. Um, Move it. Gotta think this whole thing through because it's a whole step. That scene does have power now. Yes, it had some before, but it has so much more. And Elizabeth, yes, you absolutely can submit again. Know that if you have never submitted before, of course, you will go to the top of the list and it's whatever I have time for. And good thing, Maria, because people don't like it when you kill the deer. um, and okay, let's go to Joe's. Okay, I got to bring it up on my side after I have it there on your side. Okay, so I really liked your premise for this. I loved this whole thing with this the history and the science and all of that with it. but I think you weren't bringing it to life enough because this is a really cool thing. I read a book, and I don't remember which one it was, that had something similar, not a skull, but something similar, like biologically historical thing in it. And I love that kind of stuff. So you had a really great premise, but let's show these kids in the classroom and don't forget about the other ones that are there. So this is a classroom. So he knows this kid's name. It's not just some random kid. Even if it's the first day of school, he knows his name. So Jerry, and maybe you're going to give him a last name here, loped up to my desk because I'm not sure if this is the opening scene or somewhere else. I forget if you told me. His hair a mop in front of his face, his steps wide and awkward. So you can kind of see this kind of dorky, nerdy kid, right? He had something tucked under his arm, and for a second I thought it was an apple, as current corny as that sounded. Because what you had was is as if it were an apple for the teacher, but he doesn't know what it is yet. So let's show it as if it's an apple and the teacher knows it's probably not. Instead, the quiet freshman boy who usually sat in the back, let's show him, placed a human skull on the table and stepped back. Now let's show the conversation stopping, the hum of conversation, because you know that's like a hum in the room, right? Among the 100 or so students sitting in the classroom came to a sudden stop. And then my general biology lecture hall was as silent as a crypt. And if you can do something like that, where you have some kind of a comparison, it's a crypt, and you got a skull, it kind of just reinforces what you got going on here with the dead person. Now, the rest of the class would be saying something, right? That would be natural. So let's have another kid in the class say something. Professor Harold Gibbons, a skinny, short kid with glasses and a nervous demeanor, pointed at my desk. You can describe this kid any way you want. I just threw something in there. Is that what I think it is? So now look at how long you've been able to draw this out for the reader, that there's a skull on the table and we've got 4 paragraphs or so where we don't know what's going on. And that kind of creates this sense of tension and needing to know. Then your professor character can say, it is. Then Jerry can point at the small thing hidden deep inside the skull. And I'd like to see it. I didn't have time to Google it to figure out what the description would be like. And I know you have a little bit of a description later, but I'd like to see a little bit more here. And he says it's a polystase nest or whatever that is. And this guy's a teacher, so he would be like, exactly, like, yay, good job, student, right? Because his job as a teacher is to encourage his students, otherwise known as paper wasps. So let him talk like a professor, right? Because if you're going to say good job and then give them a little bit of an education, just a second there. Um, and I think we just need just a little bit more about how this happens because I don't know why how it happened or why he knows that that's what this is. Just a little bit more description in there. And then you've got the kid, and he goes through the whole thing really quickly about how my uncle found it, he has it in his den, and now I need to bring it back. Let's draw it out just a little bit more because A, he's a teenager. They don't talk a lot to adults, right? Like they're kind of reluctant to give up information. And number two, I want to see more action in the scene. So let's show this a little bit more. So my uncle found it 15 years ago when he was deer hunting, Jerry said. He kept it in his den ever since, at least until I found it and asked if I could show it to you. Because we need to know how the kid get it and why did he bring it to school, right? So you have to show his motivation for bringing it there. Fascinating, the teacher would say, as I turned it this way and that, and have him look inside there because you need to set up a little bit for what comes after. My uncle said it's an old Indian skull. He said it has to go back to where he found it. He only let me borrow it for class. Now, the uncle has kept it in the den for 15 years. And I don't know if I remember to put a note here about this. Like, why didn't he bring it back where it needs to go? Like, he's just keeping it there. Um, and hold on a second. Let me see what you said. Metaphor and simply a great tools for setting mood and tone. Yes. Do I want to give a background students so much personal description? Only one or two will be involved later. It's not about giving the students a ton of description. This is just one line for each of these kids, right? Well, it's a little bit more for Jerry, but you want to create the setting, right? This is a classroom. There's 100 kids in there, and so you're going to have some talking. You're going to have a girl maybe in the background, and I didn't add this, but you're going to have some girl that maybe goes, "Ew, gross," or some other kid that says, "That's gross. That's disgusting." You know how kids are going to respond. So let's create the mood of this biology class. So I want to see the biology class, and it doesn't have to be a ton of each kid. You don't necessarily have to name them all, but you definitely want to have more in there. And Fred, how does more adding more description affect the pacing? So the description is strategic. You only add what is triggered and what brings out the emotion in the scene. So I'll talk about that more in later. Let's finish up Joe's here. Okay. So I think you need to add the reason why his uncle didn't bring it back before. And I didn't understand the whole thing with the tribal villages and stuff. So I think you need to explain that a little bit more. So I didn't have anything in there. And you also need to, when you've got this fascinating line, you need to explain what he's seeing that he know that is the reason why he knows that the person was murdered or killed so easily because it's a skull. So I don't know how much evidence is left, but you got to explain how he knows that. And then because we already used Harold, let's let Harold say this. But Dr. Rivers, it's just an old Indian skull. Who cares about that? Because he's a kid, right? Who cares? It's boring. Um, and then I like the evidence of a possible murder. That was a really great hook. But I need to see what he saw first so that I can understand how you got to that hook because I'm not quite seeing how that happened. Okay. All right. Yes. And I'm glad that you can see what I'm saying. It's kind of just about creating this environment because like uh Breaking Bad, right? Walter's teaching high school chemistry or whatever he teaches in the beginning, and you have some of his students interacting with him and saying things and stuff like that. They are not characters that play a part in Breaking Bad in the long run. I think one of them maybe does drugs later. But for the most part, they're just background to set him up as a great teacher. It's also a way that you can show a save the cat moment if he's really kind to one of his students at some point. So there's a lot of different things you can do this. Um, and the reason why he knows it's not Indian follows this first 200 words. Yes. Okay. But you really want to you want to put the clues. You don't have to say and tell the reader that it's not Indian, but you want to show look, there's scratch marks, or I don't actually know what would happen to a skull. I'm not a mortician or anything. I have no, or I don't know, corner, but scratches or tool marks or whatever you want to have in there that he sees, but you don't have to explain to the reader what that is. Just let the reader see it so that when he draws that conclusion, it makes sense to the reader. And yes, it was really compelling. It was a really great scene. I loved the whole thing with the skull. So for sure, it really worked really well and pulled everybody in. Now I know that I had Miranda's, I think, from last time. Is it Miranda? Yes. So if Miranda's here, just drop a little comment so that I know that you're here and I'll bring yours up. Because I don't like to, unless you guys tell me it's cool, to talk about you behind your back. I think I said that on the Friday live stream. And thank you, Piano Man. I appreciate it. And yes, in Jesse's voice, I love Breaking Bad and all of the renditions with Better Call Saul and everything. So basically, what you guys want to do with the description, was Fred's question, you only want to describe the things that are important and that are triggered. So um, in Joe's section there, that skull is obviously a big plot point. So that's something that you want to describe. We're only giving a line or so to Jerry and a line or so to Harold, not much, just to kind of move the plot along and let us see the classroom. But the skull is super important. So you want those descriptions in there. You want to see it. And the whole thing with your part, Fred, with her getting closer to him, that description is about evoking emotion so that we feel what she feels. And having, his heartbeat and his warm body and all of that, you can really feel that she feels close to him. So when you're looking at your book and you want to decide, am I going to do more description here or less? There's a few different ways you know whether you should do that. Number one, you got to trust your gut. If you're reading your passage and you're skipping parts, then it's boring you, then you have too much, right? If you're like going through it and your gut's going, I don't know, it seems like too much, or I'm bored, I don't want to read this section again. That happens to all of us, right? Where we get bored with our own work, and that means you've got too much in there. There's also the way of whether it was triggered or not. So I just watched Missing You. We watched like the first 3 or 4 episodes of Missing You on Netflix, and her father is brought up in a conversation. Her late father's brought up in a conversation, and that triggers the memory of the funeral. But it doesn't trigger the memory of the entire funeral. It's just this heartbreaking moment when she holds her mother's hand because her mother has just put flowers on the casket or whatever. So the memory that is triggered is important to that time in the plot so that the viewer and Missing You, not the reader, really gets why this is such a big deal to her. not just because, of course, it was her dad, but when it's triggered, you want to understand why this is a big deal. And you just want to trigger the part that impacts the current plot. So she's not going to run through the entire funeral in her head. Oh, here's the 40 gun salute, 21 gun salute. And here's the procession with all the police cars. Like, she's not going to think about all that. She's going to think about this one poignant moment that is evocative of everything that she's going through. So, and yes, the Better Call Saul theme song. And then with the description, you also want to say, is this going to move the plot forward? Is this something important to the plot? Because readers are trained. Like if we see the shrubbery described, then we know that shrubbery is going to become a big deal. Like when you're watching a movie, right? And they spend a whole lot of time focusing on that back door, you know a bad guy's coming through the back door because the director spent so much time focusing on it. So we're trained, if we see a lot of description about something, to file that away in the back of our memory to know that this is important to the plot somehow. So something that is important to the plot that you know down the road is going to be a big deal in the plot, you want to spend the time kind of showing the reader what it is. Another way you can use description is to show growth in a character. Like I had a character that had a pretty traumatic background. She went into a room, she had a memory of this room when she was younger, and then she went back to it as an adult after kind of getting through this trauma and coming through it and being a stronger person. And the room didn't impact her the same way it did when she was younger. So you can show the growth of a character if they revisit something that was traumatizing or made them anxious or fearful or whatever earlier in the plot. So yes, it's all a snapshot in time, but a strategic snapshot. So if you're trying to build emotion there, and in your case, Fred, you're definitely trying to build emotion in that section to show the connection between them, then you want to take the time to draw it out just a little bit more. And everything that I added to you guys didn't add a ton of words. It's just kind of drawing it out just a little bit more to give the reader some time to get invested. And with Maria's, you want to have that little bit of drawn out stuff so that we A, get connected to Portia, and then B, we feel the same, oh my God, I just hit something moment in her head that she's feeling, so that the reader is brought along with it. And I'm assuming somehow this car damage is going to be something important down the road, because otherwise you don't really need the accident unless something about the accident becomes important in the plot. So hopefully that answered your question, maybe a little bit longer winded than you wanted. That's pretty much my middle name. When I edit my videos, I'm like, oh my God, why did I talk so much? So I talk a lot in general. And my lighting is really bad today because we have a storm going on outside. So it's raining and everything. So sorry about that, you guys. But like the ring lights on as bright as they can go, and they're still not really doing. Okay. Does anybody else have any other questions on the manuscript feedback? And I didn't hear from Miranda, so I don't want to do her pages without her here. Everybody that submitted, I will send them back after this is over because I'll grab your emails from the form. So I have to make you put your email in there. And like Elizabeth asked, yes, you can submit again. You'll just go to the end of the list. If I remember that you submitted before, a lot of times I may not. Um, and I can give you feedback as well. Uh, Thanks, Kirstone. I feel like really tired today. So not a good look today. But anyways, if you guys are good, I don't have anything else to go over today. I just had those three. 4 is a good number for this session because that took 30 minutes. I talked really fast because I was cognizant of the fact that a lot of people are at work. Um, and so I don't want you guys to have to wait too long. And thank you, H Dude. Yes, it really does let you see the process, especially when you see it done to other people, which I don't mean that in a mean way. One of the best learning tools I ever had was critiquing with another author because we're both unpublished. Neither one of us really knew what we were doing. But me having to go through her work and explain why it didn't work or why it needed more here, more there, really reinforced for me what I needed to do on my own pages. So a lot of times just doing that with each other can be a huge learning experience because you have to quantify it, you have to name it and say there's not enough showing here. And then when they come to you and they're like, no, not showing here, you're like, oh yeah, my page doesn't have enough showing. And you can start to see those patterns and rhythms that your book should have. I'm not saying that you instantly have a light bulb go over your head like that one and you know everything that you should be writing, but it does help you a lot more in the revision process because you've learned to look for these things that are wrong. Granted, you're very close to your own work, so you may not always see it, but it does help a lot. And I'm really happy that it helped. And yes, you're welcome, Fred and Maria. Um, And yeah, you guys will all be like, in a year, you'll be like, oh my God, I just hear her voice in my head all the time telling me to show more, tell less. Was there an impact? Was this triggered? All of those things. The people that were in my mastermind group, which the mastermind program is coming to an end this month because it just was taking significant amount of time and it wasn't worth the price that I was charging. And so I've got to figure out something else. After this writer's boot camp course is done, I'll figure out something else. Um, and yes, it is kind of like a writing group. It is really helpful that way. I really like those things in general. Dexter asked about, you mentioned pacing. How do you vary setup and investment, action, and sequel response to happen in a most effective way? Great question. You got to trust your gut, which I know I say that a lot, but really, if you read a lot, you'll be like, this feels too long. It feels like I'm trying too hard here, or I feel like I don't have enough. Um, you got to look at your genre, right? Like a suspense novel is going to be paced a little differently than a romance novel or a women's fiction or literary fiction. They'll be paced completely differently because some have a little more leisurely pace. You've got to look at the mood that you want to get across in that scene. Do you want it to be suspenseful? Do you want it to be scary? Do you want it to be a moment where the reader is like, oh my God, did she hit a person with her car? That kind of thing. So and Maria's that moved faster. The sentences were shorter in what she had in there, and it moved faster because it's a car crash, right? It's a big, scary moment. Whereas in Fred's, it moves slower because you're building this emotion, building this bond. So you got to think about what your goal is for the scene, and you use your words to get that goal across. Move slower when you want it to be more emotional, and give the reader some time to process, and make it go faster when the action's really there. So it becomes a gut instinct after you read a lot. You start to develop a sense of rhythm of how books go together. And I know I harp on it a lot, but that highlighter method of learning to plot, that free download that I have, I'm telling you guys, it taught me so much about how to write a book. It really, really did. Let me see if I can find the link to that. It's a free download. You get it through my ThinkEffect site, which is where my course resides. And this really does allow you to see how books go together. If you go through and you apply the highlighter method just to your passages before and then your passages after and see where's the conflict, where's the motivation, where's the goal, where's a hook, where's a trigger, where's the impact, all of those things, you will begin to see a literal visual roadmap of how to write a book. And that becomes a lot easier because when you apply it to books that are really, really good, and not every book's really good, but really, really good books, and then you come back to your own and apply it. You're like, oh, I have no yellow on this page. I don't have any orange either. I need to add more of that. And so you can begin to see where you've kind of gone off the rails and what you're missing. So it's a free download. It's just a little ebook. And it was like life changing when I did that with the books that I was reading and then applied it to my own. Yeah, and vision challenges with the digital tools for the highlighter method. Yes. Well, you can also underline it, right? So you might not have the color scheme so much, but if you just go through and underline all the conflict, both external and internal, and circle the motivation, you can do other ways of doing it with your computer too. Like have it underline all the conflict and circle all the motivation, or however you want to set it apart, bold it, or whatever works for you. Um, it really does help you a lot. So, however works for you is the way that you should be doing it. Just being able to pick out conflict and seeing how frequently conflict occurs on a page will be pretty eye-opening to you. I have a video that I'm working on. I don't know if I have the pages here or not. I have a video that I'm working on that I haven't finished recording yet, but I take action, reaction, and impact and pull it out in some pages. And so it's got action, reaction, impact, action, reaction, impact, action, reaction, impact over and over again. And only these sections are highlighted because this was all I talked about in the video. But you say, oh my gosh, the character acted, there was a reaction, there was an impact, action, reaction, impact over and over and over again so that you can see how for a small scene, like this is just her getting close to him and walking over to him and then him saying something. Each of these tiny actions lead to more conflict, lead to more tension, lead to more emotion, lead to more connection with the reader. So when you guys go deeper and when once you've mastered the highlighter method for just a regular plot, definitely recommend looking for action, reaction, impact. That's something I was working on with the mastermind people. Yes. Impact is really integral to everything that you write, because the impact is what forces the character to grow and change. The impact is what the reader relates to. So if you print out and or look at a passage from a book and there's action in the scene, which there should be if it's a good book, I want you to look at the action, what the character's reaction is to it. Let me see if I have one I can just grab real quick. And then what the impact was. Um, let me see if I got a really good one that I can pull. Of course, I'm not finding like a super good one right away. I'm looking for it. Mhm. Okay, so this is a scene from The Lion Game by Ruth Ware. So she lies to her husband. He doesn't know that she's lying, but he kisses her. He kisses me properly, deeply, and then here's the impact, making me remember, here's the reaction. Sorry, the action is to kiss her, and then the reaction from her side is making me remember why I love him, why I hate deceiving him. New action. Then he pulls away and kisses their daughter. New reaction. She swivels her eyes sideways to regard him dubiously. And then the baby goes back to sucking on the bottle with the single-minded determination that she loves about her. So that is action, reaction, action, reaction, action, reaction. And then the impact comes in the next page. Of course, I don't have that page handy right here. Um, and I don't have that right there, but you want to look at that. It's action, reaction, impact, action, reaction, impact. So she lies to him about how it's not, she's not in a hurry. Feel my cheeks flush. That's her reaction to the lie. And the impact on her is that it's like a tooth that always aches and suddenly twinges with pain because it reminds her of who she used to be. So all of this stuff makes for a much more compelling scene because you're feeling it along with the character. And particularly if you're trying to write close third person or first person, it's really, really vital to do. Um, Read much more of what you suggested. The rapid fire from the heart analysis is bracing. Reminds me that readers consume sentences at the speed of thought. They do, and not at the speed of writing. That is true. I wish I could write as quickly as I read or as quickly as I think, because that would get a lot more books done in a year. But yeah, I will be talking about impact more in, especially in the courses too, because those are kind of designed for beginner to intermediate writers. And I'm thinking of how I can somehow do like an intermediate to advanced writer sort of component to stuff. I don't know if I'll do it on the channel or what, just kind of planning ahead for 2025. Um, and it's just been busy here. So I haven't come up with much of a plan yet. But the Writers Boot Camp is going live on January 30th. You can sign up now if you would like to for an early bird pricing, and you can do an extra 10% off if you sign up now with code YouTube. So let me grab that. See, I'm trying to talk at the same time as I'm searching for this. So if you sign up for the Writers Bootcamp, you get a free lesson right away about kind of expanding on your what if statement, and you can take an extra 10% off with code YouTube. It's already like 10% off, maybe a little bit more, because it's normally, I think 79. I think I have it down to 64, and an extra 10% off with code YouTube. Starts on January 20th, and we're going to do 12 weeks of writing a book from start to finish. And I am actually writing a book along with you guys on that because I want to kind of experience what I'm talking about as I write this and teach you guys what I'm doing, because it's sort of like, how do I put it together? And kind of quantifying that is difficult. That's okay, Tearstone, because I'm also going to be talking about this book process as a journey video on my channel, probably once a week or once every 2 weeks. So I will be kind of recapping stuff that I've learned about the writing process. It won't be obviously as deep of a dive as the Writers Bootcamp, but it will kind of dive into a little bit of it. Um, and there will be no Friday live streams. Sorry, guys, my dad's in town, so I'm going to have time with my family. So I won't be at the live stream this Friday. I'll put up a community post to say that. And if you want to be a part of this manuscript feedback, then submit your pages, or it's 200 words, pages. It's like a page. And do it before the next one, which is in 2 weeks, which would be the 20th. So, the same day as the Writers Bootcamp starts. And what if you already have a book? Well, this would be good for how to revise it. Now, if you have a 100,000 word book written, it's going to be a pretty intense revision, right? Because it's going to be a lot. And I understand that. Remember, I wrote 10 books in 8 years, and some of them I rewrote multiple times and they kept getting rejected. So even though it was 10 books in 8 years, it was like 5 versions of book 2 and 5 versions of book 9. So I get that that revision is a big process, but it will help you a lot in understanding, do I have enough here for my plot? Do I have enough depth here? Because if you go through and you ask all these questions that I bring up in these different weeks of the Writer's Boot Camp, and you're like, okay, I don't have an emotional goal here for the character. I don't have enough motivation. Then you know what to layer back in. And how much of an idea, Corey, should be ready for the January 20th boot camp? You can just have just a what if. What if a TSA agent is forced to put a biological weapon through onto a plane? That's the plot of Carry On Netflix. You can have just that and start. You can have, a third of your book written. You can be at any point, because what I'm going to do is make you go back and really think about your plot and your characters and make this book really stem from characters. And yeah, Fred, I get it's hard. It's a big revision. It's a lot to tackle. I am going to have some classes in the future on revision and some more specialty topic classes like dialogue and point of view, where I dive a little deeper than I can in a 10-minute video on the channel, but not right away because the Writers Boot Camp's taking a ton of time and a lot of videos and a lot of handouts. So I'm creating it as I go here, basically. And so there's a lot going on with that. And is there a link for the boot camp? Yes, it is right here. Thanks for asking, Tweety. And if you use code YouTube, you get an extra 10% off. There's also like a little promo video there. So it goes into a little bit more about what the course is about. And if you have any questions, you can just email me. So there will be a discussion available on the course, so that if you get a handout and you don't understand something, there will be discussion places there. And I'm going to have a live during the course. I have not scheduled it yet. May or may not allow for manuscript feedback. It depends on how many people sign up. It's getting kind of full right now. So if I have like several hundred people, then I'm not going to do a live where I'm going to offer feedback to everybody. That would be really overwhelming. But I will probably have at least one live so that everybody can come and ask questions like you guys are here. And it will be open only to the people in the course. So I appreciate you guys and your feedback too, because it really helps me shape what goes forward. And I'm always like, do they need to know this? Do they need to know that? Like, whatever you guys need to know, feel free to drop a comment, throw something on my community page, send me an email, whatever you want. If you join the community, there's a whole community page there that's free, and you can drop questions there. So I'm here all the time, basically. So ask me a question wherever. And Corey, oh, thank you. I appreciate that you're really enjoying it. I'm trying to keep it up. Anybody that runs a YouTube channel knows that it is a lot to do on top of a full-time company, but it's going well, and I really, really love doing. I love talking about what I do and explaining how I do it and helping you guys, because I want to read more great books, and I know everybody else wants to write really great books. So let's do some more of that. All right, I will see you guys sometime next week. There's a new video out on writing male characters if you didn't already see it on the channel. And hopefully I have that journey video, the first one about writing this new book, on Thursday. Maybe, maybe not. It's a busy week. I will see you guys soon. So